Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Hi, this is Eric.
And this is Caleb.
And welcome back. We're up to the 58th, don't you know, episode of Romulans Bearing Gifts. The numbers are finally starting to feel bigger to me.
Yeah.
It seems like it seems like we were like in the 30s or 40s like forever. And now we're almost at 60. That's crazy. Well, I guess it's all this binging of new Trek or whatever, but
Yep.
but still.
Well, I think you guys ended off at 23 during the initial run. So, yeah, it took a long time to recover from that.
That is nutty. That the number was that low when we went on extended hiatus. But it's all good. I'm glad to be back. It's fun. And this was fun because obviously we haven't done too many legacy Star Trek episodes as of late in the last several months on this podcast. And I have to say, like, it was pretty cool jumping back. And not only that, but I'm just going to spoil that for this episode of the podcast and the next episode, you chose some interesting episodes. Like, I feel like a lot of the episodes we chose in the first iteration of RBG, it was very dartboardish, if you will, like really randomizer. But this pair that we're about to get into feels more targeted, if you will. And I don't know if that was a coincidence or because you chose. I don't know if you did that by design.
I guess in some ways it may have been slightly by design because, yeah, I guess to start with this one, Distant Origin, I remember that this one, I hadn't seen it since I was a child, I'll say, but I always wanted to go back to it because I always liked the dinosaur thing. I thought that was a cool concept that they became this future society. And I remember always liking the end. It felt like Planet of the Apes, where we have this big trial sequence that has this big ethical dilemma in there. And both these episodes do focus on that. My two picks today, so that at least was intentional. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely sensed a theme. Like you're planning a little film festival. I see you. I see you. So yeah, Distant Origin. My gosh. Speaking of, well, you said you saw it as when you were young, when you were a child.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, I'm not sure if I've ever seen it before. And this happens a lot with me with Voyager in particular. Like because in my mind, I think I've seen all the Voyager episodes, but then one will get pulled out that I have no recollection of. And so I either had never seen this one, or I saw it one time on air, and then it just kind of like went away, which also happens sometimes with some of the TNG and DS9 stuff. So I honestly don't know. So either way, I was definitely coming into this very fresh and obviously had no idea exactly which direction it was going to go. That's for sure. First of all, answer me this because I wasn't sure. At the very start of the episode, and we have these aliens looking at like these bones and remains that they've recovered. Was this stuff from a previous episode of Voyager? I mean, it has to be, right?
That's what I was thinking, but I'm not sure either. Yeah.
Great. I should have done my research.
Yeah, I've never in my adult life gone through and watched Voyager all the way through. So I've never seen it in sequence. I don't know if this was, built up from something previously. Yeah, I wish I did.
Well, now I have to find out, but continue while I quietly do research in the background.
Yeah, and I guess since this is the first time covering Voyager since the reboot. Yeah, Voyager's always been an odd series for me. It was the one that was still fresh when I was watching it as a kid, prior to Enterprise starting. And so, I would happily tune in, but it was pretty obvious that this show was on a lower tier than something like TNG or DS9. It was just the performances, the usual quality of the scripts, the production design. Everything just seemed like this was very clearly like a C show. And yeah, so coming back to this was one of
A
the
C show? You mean
yeah,
like in ranking?
like maybe TNG's the A, yeah,
Okay.
DS9's the B. Or actually when I was a kid, DS9 was the A and TNG would be the B. And this was the C. It was the one where they feel like the production team themselves put less into it. But this episode always stood out in my mind. I'd seen it a couple times on TV, but I was always nervous to come back to it. I was worried that this would turn out to be more like the typical, in my mind, Voyager stuff, which is kind of fun ideas that are more experimental than maybe we'd find on TNG, but just handled with a little less grace and feeling a little bit more corny, which I feel like a lot of Voyager ended up feeling corny. So I was worried coming back to this that it would feel that way. But I'll say I was pleasantly surprised all around coming back to this one. I feel like it lived up to my childhood memories of feeling like it was a touch above the usual Voyager stuff, and the Planet of the Apes references still definitely felt like they were there, which was nice.
Hmm. Yeah, this one right away, because yeah, most people know that pre Abrams, uh, Voyager, yeah, it's my least favorite of all the Trek series. Pre Abrams, pre CBS All Access, Paramount Plus. That doesn't mean I hate it. It's just the one I get least excited about, like if it was coming on TV or whatever the situation was. And I also like, well, I did like some of the cast or not the cast, but the characters. Um, I never really had too many strong feelings about many of them, like I would in other Star Trek series. And Voyager did have one thing going for it a little bit. It did recapture a little bit of the original TOS era in the sense that the ship does feel more on its own in the outer rim, so to speak.
Yeah.
And because it's the Delta Quadrant, I guess, or Gamma, no Delta, because it's the Delta Quadrant or whatever. Like Kirk, like they'd be discovering species and things that they had like Federation had never encountered before.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that. Um, that being said, I mean, not that being said, yeah, this was a good one. This was a good one because obviously we got this premise of these two archaeologists or anthropologists who find these archaeological remains and something suspicious going on here because it seems like this alien species may have some genetic ties to the Voth. I guess they are these reptilian creatures, or should I say Silurians? Um, but anyway, and actually, like the beginning third or so of the episode, it's kind of a reverse insurrection situation. If you remember, like the opening of Insurrection, how the Federation have that little
Mm-hmm.
that little observation deck that's camouflaged in the side of the mountain, and they're just observing the Baku and all that business. This is like a reverse that, except these guys are voyeuring the Voyager. And actually, I really liked it. And because I had no memories of it, not knowing where it was going to go, I almost kind of thought the whole entire episode was going to be these guys watching, like the Watchers, I guess, in comic books as well. And I thought they were just going to kind of just observe like Voyager going on like an episodic adventure. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that would have been cool too, actually.
That's what I thought. And they were like, I thought the Voyager was going to encounter something else that they were going to have to deal with, and the Voth were going to be like judging them, like on like their decision making and how they interpret things and stuff like that. That's not the way it went, but that's what I thought was going to happen, and that seemed really cool.
And I liked during that scene how they're kind of, they're observing the humans, but they've got such kind of a weird perspective on them. Like they think there's that like, oh, who was it again? When they thought they were having some sort of mating ritual. I watched this 2 days ago. Who was it again?
I don't remember who was having the mating ritual.
uh, yeah, I don't remember. It was Tim Paris and who else?
Oh,
Bablana.
yeah, Balana.
Yeah, yeah. They were just having like their usual banter, and they're like, "This seems like some sort of mating ritual between these two." I just like their detached scientific ways, and them kind of underestimating the Voyager crew.
The one weird thing it shows, in an allegorical type of way, just that aspect you spoke of, that just because, like, let's talk about humans for a second, just because we become so educated from our perspective, like in the last 200 years, especially with our advances of science, technology, etc., um, and that we think, you know, that the average human today is, we would assume, would just be so much more intelligent than a typical human 500, 1,000, 2,000 years ago. But really, with all the extra knowledge,
Mm,
many humans appear to be just as stupid as humans have always been
damn.
for all of time. Because these guys are, I guess, technically from a more advanced species or race than humankind. Um, and these guys are experts in their field.
Mm.
Yet when they're interpreting data, they come to like ridiculous conclusions. And I have a very strong feeling that this is exactly what continues to go on today in our society in all different areas,
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about the quote unquote experts of whatever the field is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like they have this type of arrogance, whether they're observing things that pertain to their work or they're just observing things like in the world in general.
Mm-hmm.
That they have this kind of arrogance, pomposity, just this assumption that we're superior intellects, and then, like I said, come to these ridiculous conclusions, but just go with it. Yeah, I feel like that really rings true for humans in general.
And that's a slight over characterization for them. I don't know how at least for our lead scientist how pompous and arrogant he is necessarily. He just
No, yeah, I don't mean with ill will or intent, but just
yeah.
like with that scene you described about the mating ritual. Yeah, he doesn't. It's not his personality to be um, pompous or arrogant. It's his opinion in the moment that is pompous or arrogant, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would take it more as just not understanding the context of a different interaction than he'd be used to. Maybe with these Voth, maybe they
Yeah, yeah.
I guess they even mentioned they have mating like kind of chemicals that are excreted to give a signal.
Well, now you're unintentionally playing semantics, because that's what I'm saying though. Because like with humans in the real world, they encounter a ritual or something that they're unfamiliar with, that they're ignorant of. Yet the arrogance is to assume that you know, um, when you shouldn't be making that assumption. You know what I mean? With something that is obviously new or undiscovered to you.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that's fair. But they continue on their kind of early early summaries of investigating the ship or at least observing.
Yes.
I love how quickly the Enterprise, or not the Enterprise, I love how quickly the Voyager crew kind of catch on and like, oh shit, there's someone on the deck or there's someone on the bridge here. And these guys are like, oh fuck, how'd they discover us so quickly? And they try to do their little escape attempt. But the Voyager crew just snatches them up almost instantly. So I like that as just a sign of competence. Sometimes I don't feel like Voyager is the most competent of ships, so it was nice to
True.
see that.
True. But I feel like this has happened before on some Star Trek series. I couldn't tell you, or maybe multiple Star Trek, where there was secret observers that were found. Hasn't that happened before?
Yeah, you have mentioned one earlier when you said watches the Watchers. Who watches the Watchers had that happen too, which was
Oh, that was a Star Trek episode I was naming.
yeah, you have named it, yeah.
When I said that, I was thinking of the Watchers in Marvel Comics.
Yeah, and that one's somewhat kind of about that stuff too, because it's a big Prime Directive episode from TNG.
Oh shoot!
Who watches the Watchers? Great episode.
Oh my god! I didn't even realize. I have to look up what that is now.
Insurrection was almost kind of a half remake of that episode in a way.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I'll probably recognize it when I see it. Because yeah, I was pretty sure that Insurrection kind of had that kind of reference too.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I very much remember this episode. I mean, Who Watches the Watchers?
yeah,
Oh yeah,
great one.
for sure, for sure, for sure. Hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, the Voyager crew discovers them, and then First Contact falls apart, and we see that, which I like. They point out these guys aren't actually speaking English, and they have this kind of chirping language. I always like when they point that out because it. At first, I was like, oh, like when they were watching Tom Paris and B'Elanna, I was like, so they understand what they're saying right now? They just can speak the same language instantly. And I know that they have their supposedly have their kind of universal translator, but it picked up on the Voyager crew pretty quickly. I was thinking so.
Yeah, I was wondering why Voyager's universal translator wasn't working right away, or does it only work? No, it doesn't. Like it doesn't have to have everything pre-programmed, does it? Like it functions with like
Well,
unknown species. I thought.
I thought with unknown species it takes like a minute, like it has to process a little bit. That's what I thought. Maybe I'm just thinking of Enterprise because I've been watching so much of that lately.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I feel like that's an Enterprise
Yeah,
thing.
maybe I'm just thinking of that.
Yeah, yeah. That so I found that strange, and I was waiting for a character to say, "Oh, for some reason, Universal Translator is not working," but I don't think anyone ever said that.
Yeah, and I do wonder later on if that was just like a sound that they make when they're nervous or something, or he wasn't actually trying to speak.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't quite sure, but oh, but since we kind of pushed past one of the early things I wanted to mention, what do you think about the Voyager opening sequence there, the theme and the visuals? Since we haven't seen it in a while.
I liked it when the show first came out. By the way, I was as excited as anyone for Voyager to premiere when it was brand new because aside from maybe when the Abrams movies came out, in my memory, Trek fandom, like mainstream, it peaked during my lifetime. It peaked during the time when TNG had its finale and transitioned to movies, and then they already had DS9 on air, and then Voyager was about to come out. That was the peak of Star Trek relevance, I would say, in American society, at least during my lifetime.
Hmm.
So that was a time where I was just like, oh, it was almost like the heydays of like the MCU. Like, oh, what's the next movie gonna be? That's kind of how it felt like for Voyager. And so I really liked it initially, but I will say as years went by and after the show um, ended, I really wanted to skip it all the time.
Oh wow.
I really wanted to skip it, and there was nothing wrong with. I mean, visually it's fine and everything like that. It's just it felt old fashioned to me, like even in a Star Trek sense, it felt old fashioned just to play this little this little ditty, like I don't know. It felt passe as the years went by. The opening title sequence. So yeah, so it doesn't register as one of my favorites in the long run. But again, there's nothing essentially wrong with it. It's probably just like a personal preference thing.
Yeah, because I really like it. I like the. I think the visuals, of course, have dated poorly, and maybe an HD upgrade would bring them out and make them shine better. But I think the music.
I tell you what, it really reminds me now in modern times. It reminds me of like the opening titles for the Orville.
Oh, interesting.
Very similar in my mind.
They flash back to the Brandon Braga era of opening themes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I haven't watched Orville in like 5 months, but yeah, I want to say it's like it's right out of the playbook of Voyager opening title sequence.
Yeah, but I really like the music for this one. It almost feels like Blue Planet or something, one of those kind of nature shows. But it's got this kind of somber edge to it,
True, true,
which I think is fitting to Voyager with them being trapped out there.
true. I mean, you're perfectly right, and that is very apparent. It's, I guess, it's because once I started having a relationship, because like I said, I liked it out the gate, the opening title sequence. But once I started having more of a relationship with the show itself
Mm-hmm.
and started getting a grasp for what it was going to be like week in, week out, then it just started feeling passe. Because it seemed like what you're saying, like it was true. Like the theme has like this longing and poignancy
Mm-hmm.
and like a little tinge of sorrow or wistfulness. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah,
But the show doesn't live up to the promise of the theme song, I guess, in the
yeah,
long run for me, which is what I don't like.
it's true.
Okay, thank you.
At a certain point, it starts to feel like, oh, let's try to get home. It's just the kind of gimmick that they're using for to push the episodes along.
Yes. So then when I hear the poignant theme like later in time, I start feeling the sorrow of this isn't the show I wished it was going to be.
That's fair.
I was sold a bill of goods.
Well, back to the episode. So we see, yeah, the crew of the Voth are split up here. We have the lead scientist who kind of kidnaps Chakotay because Chakotay gets shot by the smaller guy. I guess they have some sort of, is it like a natural dart, or is that what their weapon looks like? I couldn't tell if that was just a biological thing that they shoot out.
Yeah. I kind of thought it was a biological thing too. Like it kind of reminded me of, oh my God, I don't even know his name. Oh my God, the tall alien from Discovery on the bridge. Jeez.
Oh yeah, what was his name?
Oh
Damn,
my God, how sad is that?
I knew it a
I,
little while ago. It's left me now, but
I've watched the entire damn series. How do I? And he's one of the main characters. You know, he's not a
yeah,
side character. Oh my gosh.
I usually know it. I can't remember it right now, but yeah, once you say it, I'll be like, ah, damn, there it is. But
and also like the actor's name is on the tip of my tongue too, because he's obviously so recognizable himself. Saru,
Saru, yeah,
played by Doug Jones, and I should because Saru, for some reason, Michael Burnham's character, I can just hear her in my head like the thousands of times she says Saru, 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 like all the different times she says his name a lot in the show.
uh,
But okay, the reason I brought up Saru is because as we learn more in some Discovery episodes, his alien species, see, I don't even remember what they're called. His alien species has like these natural biological features that are just kind of strange that
mhm.
are activated by like different emotions and things. Um, deep cut reference, but it reminds me of like the last season of Knight Rider, how Kit, the car Kit, got like outfitted with all these extra extensions and things that would protuberances that would come out of the car's exterior. That's what Saru was like. He had like all these hidden features, kind of like R2D2 in the prequels. He had all this hidden shit that you didn't know about.
Mhm.
That's yeah. And so the Voth, getting back on track, yeah, I kind of took it as it was like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Like he just had like an emotional situation and something shot out of his wrist or something.
Yeah, so he's left with the Voyager crew, and I like how because we see on the one side with Chakotay and the scientist, we see the scientist kind of breaking down his theory to Chakotay, and on the other side we see Janeway just basically figuring out on her own too. She's like, wait a minute, this seems their DNA is the same as us. Let's go to the holodeck and let's see what the closest relationship is.
Yes.
Which I thought that was kind of weird, the holodeck.
Why?
I like them seeing the dinosaurs and seeing like the early the closest relative between the two of them, and then seeing the hadrosaur.
Yeah.
What I thought was weird was being like, okay, let's extrapolate it to what it would look like today if evolution kept happening,
Right.
and then it was relatively close to them. I was like, that's not really how that works. Like you can't just extrapolate random mutations down to figuring out what it would look like.
Okay, that's true. That's true. I get what you're saying now about why. I want to say definitely at least two things about the holodeck sequence. First of all, why did the Voyager holodeck just itself look so janky? Like,
Yes.
but I need to go back and compare it to even like. I feel like it was probably the first or second episode of Voyager where they first showed their holodeck. I feel like whatever it looked like in episode 1 and 2 is not what it looked like in this episode. I could be wrong. Or I mean, it's the same thing. It's just it was shoddily, hastily put together for this episode, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of that going on in Voyager. It feels like it really does feel like the crew behind it just either didn't have the investment or didn't have the means to make the show sing like the other series did. Like DS9 on season 3 looks significantly better than this show does on season 3. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why they kind of shortchanged the potential for Voyager. I feel like the scripts have the same thing. They just feel like they lack some of that same polish from my memories.
I really have no answer. Like, I wonder what budgets were like. I wonder if DS9 had like a much bigger budget. Like, I have no idea. I have no idea what that was about.
Yeah.
Oh, the other more important thing about the holodeck I wanted to say was this is something they had done quite a few times since TNG. I wish I had all the times like on a list in front of me where they went to the holodeck to kind of like what was it called? What was it called on Sherlock and Moffat Doctor Who, where our protagonist would like go into his head to try to solve a problem?
Oh God, I don't know what they call that, but
There's a term for that. It was like there was a term, right? Like mind castle or something, or it wasn't that, but there was like a term, right, where Sherlock or Capaldi Doctor would like go into like his head palace or something.
I remember Moffat fans, yeah, had some sort of name for it, but I just rolled my eyes.
Well, that concept, I feel like they've done that in the holodeck at least a few times since TNG, and it was usually Geordi who would do it in TNG.
Yeah.
And whenever this was done, I always would perk up and just freaking loved it when they were trying to solve something out in the holodeck, brainstorm, whatever. I love it. One of these days we'll get to the one where Geordi starts turning into that alien species that turns invisible. I think I might be mixing them up, but there's an episode where there's some mysterious killer and they're using the holodeck to recreate the scene of the crime. And somehow the holodeck AI is able to suss out multiple shadows from like one shadow. And then from the shadow, Geordi or somebody is able to extrapolate what the creature could be that cast the shadow. It was insane. It was insane TNG CSI work, but it was amazing. That's one of my low-key favorite episodes. And this or anything like that, and this reminded me of that. And it is like you said, hokey, like to try to figure out, like, you know, I mean, you could be sitting there all day in the holodeck. What are humans going to look like 100,000 years from now? Oh, interesting. Show me 200,000 years. Like, we could just keep going with this all day. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And I want to say, it's not just computer theorize what they're going to look like, and it could turn out anything. But the fact that it would turn out something so close to these guys who, they'd gone through how many years of space travel, learning all these different things. It just seems weird to me that somehow the holodeck would be able to pump them out.
Like, God, if holodeck technology was real, it'd be as bad as TikTok is for me, but like, like 100-fold, because I'd be in there all day. Holodeck, like, show me common earthworm. Show me common earthworm, like 2 millennia in the future. And it would be like some kind of bipedal creature that would evolve from Earth. It'd be Earthworm Jim. But I would be doing that with like simplistic species. Okay, give me a squid. Give me a squid. Or an octopus. And then it would give me Squidward. I would just be in there all day. Like, just show me everything in its advanced form.
The fact that you can like live in books, you could live out a story that you love. Oh man, wow.
Oh, it would be ridiculous. Another thing I would do, Oh God, we could do a whole different series on this. What would you do with a holodeck?
Yeah.
I would keep recreating my high school years and the people I knew and everything. But obviously, I'd be me, grown up me with all my wisdom, and I would be like reliving my high school days, like an asshole, um, because of all my like I'd probably be like berating all my different teachers and telling them how stupid they are and like how the way they're trying to teach their lesson is so ridiculous and dim-witted.
Yeah, the Vengeance holodeck use could solve a lot of problems for folks. It's the new therapy. It's going to the holodeck.
Honestly, there should have been an episode, or it should have been addressed at some time in Star Trek where, like, the holodeck could have almost been the downfall of all human civilization because because everyone would have stopped working. Oh, we haven't even talked about holosuites and oh my god, are you kidding me? Because one would assume that if this technology was real, even though like Cisco and everybody is on the up and up in their day life when they're clocked in at work, you have to imagine if you could look into the personal holosuites of all the different members of the crew, that you would discover the most detestable, immoral things that they do in private.
Damn. Well, let's move back to the episode itself here. Because I'm curious what you think about how extremely technologically advanced the Voth are. Because I was shocked. These guys are, I mean, they're some of the most technological superior species I think we've seen on Star Trek. They're up there.
Oh, there's been some. Come on, hold on.
Well, I mean, they're up there. They're pretty damn powerful.
I'll say maybe top 10% of the most advanced species because there's been quite a few.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, because they could just take the Voyager no problem, shut down any system before they try to fire. I mean, and I love the look of their ship, by the way. Their giant city ship, they call it. I like how different it looks than a lot of the other ships we've seen. It's got those weird little pustule looking like blobs of light. I think those are cool.
Oh, I skipped over this, or I must have been multitasking because I'm looking at it now. Because I was like, "What are you talking about?" And okay, I see.
Just the ship itself, or them like taking over the Voyager.
The whole thing with the mothership. I missed all the effects.
Oh, okay, I see.
So I'm looking at it now. Like, oh shit, okay.
It's gigantic too.
It's a whole Star Wars thing going on.
Yeah.
Except yeah, bigger scale. Oh, the old CGI, the old 90s CGI.
Yeah, it's not the greatest here, and
it's not the greatest, but it was better than Babylon 6 CGI. That's for sure. Babylon 6 is like PS1, and this is like PS2 graphics by comparison.
Yeah, Babylon 5. I never really watched much of that show.
I never did either. I tried multiple times in the last 2 decades, and it just won't stick.
Oh wow!
And who knows? And it sucks because you can sort of get. I think they were in HD wherever they were streaming a few years ago, but again, the CGI is just goddamn watchable.
Damn,
especially in HD. But the filmic elements, it's like TOS. They're in native HD, if you know what I mean, because they were shot on 16 or 35 millimeter. But the effects, looks like Beast Wars animation.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, the ship's interesting, like a little Star Warsy, but it's cool. But here's the thing about the whole advanced technology business, especially as it pertains to Voyager. Are they constantly trying to F with us, the producers of Voyager? Because I hate how many times there's a possibility dangled out there somewhere that we could get home much, much faster. And it just never happens.
Yeah.
And it could just be right there, like the answer. And it happens so frequently. Like, it's almost like Zeus is fucking with Odysseus. like this can't be. This can't be the way it's supposed to be. Like someone is behind the scenes pulling the strings of delaying our return home.
Well, there most definitely was someone behind the scenes pulling the strings. It was the producers.
But like I said, that insult to injury, they'd be like, these guys have this amazing transwarp drive. The
Hmm.
conversation doesn't even come up in the episode, like where Janeway can even ask, or
Hmm.
even have she may not even have knowledge, but it doesn't even come up. Like, hey, could you help us out? No, it's just there, sitting idly as a detail.
And that does make the show interesting and frustrating because it's like the Delta Quadrant. It is such a fascinating, like untapped whole section of this universe. But then, yeah, at the same time, it's frustrating because it's like, oh, yeah, all this fun stuff is dangled in front of us, but we'll maybe never get to explore it again because it's over in the Delta Quadrant, and the whole rest of the universe, the show is not there. So it is weird in that way. And do you think we'll return to it in the Paramount Plus stuff? Do you think that'll be a new section? Like, oh, we're gonna go back and explore the Delta Quadrant again and meet up with these guys because they've got their whole little section of space.
I forget where was Prodigy taking place. Was it Delta? I think it was Delta.
Oh, oh, I don't remember.
Like
Yeah.
where it all starts off, and like the female heroine, her where her alien species comes from. I think they're Delta Quadrant because I the only
Hmm.
reason I think it's Delta because I think it's the same quadrant that the Borg are in or originate from, which I believe is Delta.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't. Hmm. Yeah, I only watched those first 4 episodes, so yeah, I don't remember.
Oh well, if you keep watching, once they get the protostar, as they do, they're basically trying also themselves to get back. Well, they've never been there. They're trying to get to the Alpha Quadrant.
Oh,
So
damn.
that's kind of their mission in the first like 10 episodes.
So just trying to leave again. Yeah, when's the expansion? Oh, but I guess we can move to the kind of the big section, the big trial moment.
Yes.
Yeah, and how'd you feel like this comes across?
Well, they say it's based upon like the trial of like Galileo
Yeah,
back in the day. Okay, fine. That's yeah. Okay, I get it.
yeah. If you ever watched Cosmos, I was definitely thinking of that series a lot watching this.
I did watch the original Cosmos, but I don't think I saw all of it. I can't remember the Galileo sequences off the top of my head. But that being said, it was kind of infuriating because I was, kind of enjoying this episode. It was weird to me that as soon as Chakotay, after he was kidnapped, and then, but once they understood what was going on, him and his kidnapper, I
Hmm.
was surprised they didn't go back to Voyager like instantaneously. Like what's like this? We should be able to resolve all this. Like, but no, they just keep on doing their thing. Oh, because he said,
Yeah.
his reputation's on the line. Blah blah blah. Whatever.
Well, I think more than his reputation, I think he was worried about his freedom too,
Well, yeah, okay,
and we see why. So,
fine.
and he already contacted people. He was like overzealous, so he set up like a little summit.
But the trial itself was infuriating because the head woman, I don't know what her position is.
I feel like it's the same as Dr. Zaius in Planet of the Apes. He's the religious authority, this and the science authority.
Was he a he? I thought he was a she.
I mean, in Planet of the Apes,
Oh, okay, sorry.
yeah, religious authority and the scientific authority.
Okay. It was infuriating, I guess, by design because that character's positions and just maintaining the old ways was just too much, especially for this supposed like ultra advanced civilization. And then Chakotay even brings up such a great counterpoint
Hmm.
at a certain point when he talks about some of their history that he looked into. And just for that, whatever she is, whatever her title is, just to just like complete dismiss it and just do this show trial BS.
Yeah,
Ugh, it was just blech.
she doesn't even address it. He's like, for you to deny this, you're denying your the great achievements of your ancestors to flee Earth during this time of devastation and to establish themselves so far away. And then she just kind of looks at him and then just walks away and sits down. She's like, okay, I'm not going to have this argument anymore. Clearly, my points aren't going to win against you two, so I'm just going to get back to threatening.
Yeah, and then not to relate it to current day politics, there's a micro and a macro comparison I can see, which could only happen when you watch something like this 25 years like later after the air date. Um, that on the one thing, I don't know, have you ever seen President Biden's press secretary, current one?
I'm sure I have, but I don't remember who they are at the moment.
Can't remember her. Black female.
Yeah, yeah, I can't remember what her name is, but yeah, I know who you mean.
Yeah, I should know her name because I'm constantly into the news every day. But the way you just described her dismissing the argument as if it was nothing, that I feel like is President Biden's like current press secretary. Like she just, it's like she'll just a reporter or something just makes a really good point about why their question is germane or relevant. And if she doesn't like the question, it's very obvious how she just dismisses it, or whatever she says in response, she like has like willful blindness to what was just said before, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and blah, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it because Biden's previous press secretary Psaki, um, she was so much more skillful at rebuttals and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But his current one, she just will just as if we just struck that from the record, like it wasn't said at all. I hate that. I hate that technique, and
Yeah.
that's what this character is doing. Um,
Yeah, so disrespectful, and it makes you look stupid. It makes you look like you can't counter them.
yes, but somehow that doesn't translate. Anyway, that's the micro comparison. The macro comparison is it kind of reminds me of course, the whole stupid COVID pandemic and response, etc. And having dissenting voices going against whatever the dominant the dominant narratives were about COVID and what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to react and
Oh
vaccines, yada
no.
yada. Our woeful anthropologist, he feels, retroactively, he feels like the minority opinion during COVID times. In other words, you can't have a minority opinion. You can't even explore a minority opinion. And like the episode, as real life has played out with the pandemic, turns out the little guy was right, as the
Well,
character was in the episode.
depends which little guy you mean. I think when getting into the politics surrounding COVID, it's getting into very dicey waters.
It is all dicey, but there still remains a fact that the people, obviously I'm speaking in generalities, and obviously there's crazy people on all sides, but in general, the dissenting voices did have, and we're not just talking about Joe Blow dissenting voices. We're talking about dissenting voices who were like fully trained scientists and
Yes, that's the difference.
that's what I'm talking about, those people, those dissenting voices that were just completely squashed out, who said, "Hey, I've done this study and I found this." Nope, nope, that's not a thing. We've already moved on. No, but if you use this, no, we've already got a thing for that, and we're going with that. That's what I'm talking about. And a lot of those dissenting voices of those scientists are the ones who I'm talking about, who turned out to be right. Uh, it turns out after all this, um, but yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely wouldn't go to COVID, but that's an interesting. I would.
it's just you can't help when you watch these things 25 years later, and then you start seeing connections to your current world.
Yeah. I mean, maybe just my personal passion for investigating evolution in general. I always find that a really fascinating subject, and this one being so clearly tied into that debate and that debacle of how many years the religious authority, and in some ways still the many religious types still try to argue against that. I think that was the more direct kind of analogy there.
Well, for sure. But again, if we talk about Galileo, that's why I could again see the comparison of Galileo's position and again those
Yeah.
COVID scientists. So it's all kind of germane. And even though Galileo was going up like religious beliefs, as
Yeah.
you say, and evolution was as a concept or a theory, with the COVID thing, it actually was like a war of religion or evangelism, but in a secular way, because because whatever side you were on politically with COVID, it was choosing a religion or religious viewpoint, if you know what I mean. I mean that's the way people treated it. Whatever side of the fence they were on, they were they. And again, I'm not talking about the scientists in the laboratory, but I mean people at large like chose their denomination, and then once they chose their denomination, they really stuck to it with a passion, like a religious like fervor.
No, I guess I can understand what you mean, but yeah, I tend to think they're in fairly different realms, but I do know what you mean.
Different realms, but I think it's still the same human brain and inherent human brain like fallacies.
Yeah, I just think when it comes to the kind of the structured religion having such a control over power, I feel like that creates a different dynamic. So upholding this decades long stronghold on this element of thought, I think that's different than just fear driven folks. But
Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that, but I think that's on a smaller scale because it wasn't centuries old, the institutions.
yeah,
But that's what I think, like the WHO and the CDC were acting like an entrenched religious organization.
yeah, I guess yeah. Maybe I just feel like COVID. It was such a it created such kind of a hideous political landscape that I just try to avoid in general because I feel like everybody lost their shirts during COVID, and for the next like 20 years, probably will be dealing with the ramifications of how much that's damaged politics.
Yes, but unfortunately, in 20 years, even though we'll finally be getting over the COVID situation, uh, debacle, I guarantee you 20 years later, we're going to have a new situation and we're going to make all the same mistakes on the new situation, on how we try to handle and interpret it, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it could be, could be. Oh
I'm
boy,
telling you, everything with humans is like a 20-year cycle. It's so ridiculous
yeah, never learn from our
of
mistakes.
doing the same
Yeah.
thing over again. Yes, over and over and over again.
Oh, but I feel like we've come around to the end of this episode a little. Unless you have any other straggling thoughts.
Yeah, and this may be a theme that will continue, but this is one of those episodes where, whether it's Voyager or whatever Star Trek series it is, it there should be a name for this category of, and there's a few Doctor Who episodes like this. Should be a category of, um, our heroes were there or our characters were there,
Mm,
but it didn't even matter one way or the other.
yeah.
Like ultimately, they didn't have any effect on the big picture, whatever it was. They were just more observers themselves. Uh, and that's a weird category of Star Trek episodes, where, in other words, it nothing really happened or came out of the fact that the Voyager crew met these aliens. Like if Voyager had never met them, not much would have been different, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the one thing that they added, although again it was from the scientist perspective, is because that whole trial was basically like either you agree to renounce your beliefs or you go to a detention camp. And he was totally fine to go to that detention camp and hold strong to his beliefs. It wasn't until she threatened that the entire Voyager crew would also have to go with him. That's when he finally backed down and said, okay, I'll protect these people and I'll publicly announce and go on like a campaign to discredit myself.
Yeah,
So if it wasn't for them being there, he probably wouldn't have had to do that. But that's about it. Yeah,
yeah, that's really weird too.
which I thought was commendable. He was willing to put it all on the line, unlike his younger colleague who still had a more of a career ahead of him. He was willing to discount right away, but this guy was. It only came down to hurting others that he finally, gave it up.
So yeah, it turns out the remains that they initially discovered, the scientists,
Hmm.
were the remains and the uniform of, oh man, my screen just, of Ensign Hogan, who was killed by a native life form on that planet in the first episode of season 3, which was called Basics Part 2.
Oh, that's nice. That's fun.
Yeah, so at least there was a callback. Because, yeah, I was pretty sure that was something.
Yeah, you'd think so.
Yeah.
But do you have a rating scale for us this time? Do you have a unit of measure?
Um, what is that little orb that Chakotay gives him at the end? Is it? It's the Earth.
Yeah, little globe.
A little globe. Yeah, a little globe. How many little Earth globes out of 5 are you gonna get this episode?
I don't know. Because I feel like I want to give it a boost because this I feel like is one of the stronger episodes of Voyager that I've seen in the past few years on my kind of casual revisiting. So maybe a 4. I think a 4 seems reasonable for this episode.
Okay. Sadly, I'm gonna give this a 3, which I don't think is a bad rating or anything, but out the gate it felt like a 4.
Mm.
And the first third of the episode, it felt like a 4 to me. Like I was really invested. Um, but by the third, I mean by the end of it, and I guess I got really so much distaste from the trial, I guess, and the results of the trial. It just gave me such a distaste for the overall story, which I guess, I mean, it's built that way by design.
Yeah.
It just, but that's not that doesn't feel satisfactory at the end of things, even though that's the way you're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I'm giving it a 3.
Yeah, did you feel like it was too heavy-handed, the trial, or just that, yeah, it was like too frustrating to watch?
I mean, frustrating, heavy-handed in the sense that she was so stuck in her ways, and I guess I get it. They did it all on purpose. They're super technological, yet when it comes to this, they're so backward in their thinking.
Yeah.
I get it. But it's so dumb and close-minded. But I almost feel like if we could talk to other people in positions of power in the society, that maybe she's just a bad apple, like hard-headed, and maybe they're not all like that. Like maybe other Voth are more open-minded. I don't know.
Yeah, and I like they point out that this that transwarp tech that they have. They mentioned that when that was first introduced, like there was a lot of religious uproar around that too. People being like, "This is against our doctrine. This is going to completely change our society." But the scientists won out, and it changed the society for the better. And that was another thing where she couldn't argue. Once Chakotay said that, she was like, "Ah, crap." So yeah, she's just kind of a block in the road. She managed to get to her position because she was such a zealot, but that's not going to hold out going in the future, I would think. So that was kind of the point. Scientists need to stay strong in their beliefs and not let established doctrines hold them back. No matter how hard they try.
Yep. Oh, and one final thing I'll say about the opening title sequence, because it just came on again, and I'm looking at it. I remember now something that really bothered me about the opening title sequence, and it would sometimes happen like with the TNG one as well for me. But what always bothered me is that as the Voyager is flying by these different celestial bodies, it just seems like the scale is wrong with the ship compared to some of these planetoids, unless I'm to believe that all these planets are just incredibly small in scale. Even though they have like what appear to be atmospheres that you would assume are not 2 feet thick in real life or something. Because like when Voyager, especially it's the ring planet.
Yeah.
Like if this is scale, either the Voyager is incredibly humongous or this planet is just incredibly small. Because it makes no sense otherwise. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. No, I could definitely see it.
Or maybe it's a ringed moon. But even for a moon, like the continental United States can kind of cover almost like half of the face of the moon. It would just take like a square acre to cover like the face of this planet in the opening title sequence, or moon, or whatever it is. I know nobody cares, but as a kid, even then, I was like, I noticed it. It's just a weird thing.
And just since you brought up the ship again, what do you think about the Voyager?
I've never liked the look of it on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird how you get the sense that it's a smaller ship when you watch the show, when you see it, especially exterior shots.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you see a scale side by side and you realize it's actually quite a bit bigger than Kirk's Enterprise, and it's like, what the hell? It's only small when compared to like the Galaxy class. When you compare it to a Constitution class, all of a sudden it's like really bulky.
Oh, really?
That's strange. Yes. Yeah.
Because I always think of it as a small ship too.
Exactly. Especially how it lands like on planet surfaces. But it's actually really big compared to a Constitution class ship. So that's strange. I never liked the look of it, kind of looking like an arrowhead.
Mm-hmm.
The way the nacelles move, I guess, is kind of cool and interesting.
Yeah.
But I never liked the look. I never cared for the aesthetic on the outside or the inside. I don't know, is that unpopular? It's just how I feel.
Yeah, I don't know what people think about that one. I think it's okay, but I also think it looks kind of weird. I like the bottom of it, how it almost looks like a shark's mouth.
Mm-hmm.
But it is kind of an odd looking ship, I'll say.
And the deflector dish was always weird to me. It just didn't seem like. I know it was kind of similarly shaped to the D, but it just, I don't know. I don't even understand it. It doesn't look like a deflector dish. It looks like it's just like a hatch that's supposed to open or something. I don't really know. But sorry, Voyager. I'm just not that much of a fan. Oh, and I was gonna say too, even before you asked the question, it's funny to me how it's supposed to be one of the relatively smaller Starfleet ships, but yet for the time, its bridge was one of the biggest, if not the biggest bridge.
Yeah, but I guess I think that about puts the cap on that one.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But it was definitely not a shit episode of Voyager.
Yeah.
Definitely not. Definitely not that. I don't want people to think I was going too hard on it.
Yeah, it was fun to come back on a solid episode. Because I've seen a couple over the years that I just like put on a Star Trek randomizer and it came up and I was like, ooh, that was an off episode of Voyager. Definitely seen a number of those lately.
Yes.
So it's been good to see a good one.
All right. Well, so closing out the show today, this is Eric.
And this is Caleb. And until next time,
female captain must be a matriarchal society.
Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Oh yeah, I like that line.
Well, you guys are idiots. Like, I mean, do a little more research. I mean, you just can't look at something and do an instant hot take.
Well, they're doing their early notes.
It's just like, okay. All right.